Yeah. Hold him. Just turn him over on his stomach.
The X26 Taser gun. It's marketed by Tasers International to police forces as a safer, non-lethal alternative to guns for police officers when they're encountering someone who's a physical threat. Rather than cops worrying about harm from physically tackling somebody or facing the permanent effects of their handgun, law enforcement has come to rely on this as their go-to weapon, if you will. And when I say rely, I mean it. In fact, tasers are being used by more than 16,000 law enforcement agencies in 107 countries, including here in the U.S. And even though police are relying on them more and more, there's been a growing number of incidents over the past decade where they've been used in questionable situations and have had lethal results. Now, we told you about the case of Jesse Kersey, the 17-year-old mentally handicapped boy who was riding a bike in Dayton, Ohio, when he was stopped by an officer. When the officer was thrown off by Kersey's speech impediment, the boy became confused and started to walk away from the officer towards his mother's house. Just before he walked inside, he was tased in the back. Yes, a mentally handicapped boy was tased for walking away from a police officer. Let's move on to the story of Everett Howard. The recent high school graduate was taking part in a Jump Start program before beginning college classes at the University of Cincinnati, where he was tased by campus police. Now, police claim that they were responding to an assault call when they encountered Howard. And while his fists were drawn, he didn't have any weapons. And when the police tased Howard, he went into cardiac arrest and died a short while later. Now, these are just a few examples of these kinds of tragic incidents. But as these stories continue to come out and tasers continue to be used, people are taking notice. Groups like Amnesty International have argued that tasers need more regulations. The police don't understand or take into consideration the potentially lethal reaction when they're used in the field. Now, some tasers use compressed nitrogen to fire their darts, not gunpowder, so there's no legal requirement to test or regulate the cop's trusty weapon. But Taser International stands by the fact that their tool saves more lives than it kills. In fact, Taser International posted in a report on their website that, quote, there is no reliable published data that proves tasers negatively affect the heart. Well, a new study written by Dr. Douglas Zipes and published by the American Heart Association's magazine, Circulation, came to quite a different conclusion.
That it happens is absolutely unequivocal. Taser unquestionably can produce sudden cardiac arrest and death.
Dr. Zipes' findings are pretty conclusive, but they were quickly shot down by Taser International. A spokesman for the company says that Zipes has served as a witness for plaintiffs who sued the company in the past, and that his conclusion should be taken with a grain of salt. However, other cardiologists seem to think the opposite and very much respect Dr. Zipes.
He would be somebody that everybody would know. It's a name that would be recognized by all cardiologists.
In fact, his findings have been echoed by other doctors who say that the conversation about tasers needs to be focused on whether the risk is low enough to warrant regular use by police. Now, while we wait to see how law enforcement actually treats these findings, Dr. Zipes does say that cops should be properly trained and even carry a defibrillator on them at all times.
And you think police officers should have defibrillators in the trunk if they're using tasers?
I do actually, yes, and know how to use it.
Now, just to give you an idea of how frequently police rely on their tasers, listen to these numbers. In 2010, Chicago's Independent Police Review Authority issued a report that law enforcement used tasers on nearly 700 offenders over the course of just 1 year. Amnesty International released findings which show that 500 people have died from tasers since 2001, with Oklahoma City leading the nation in the most taser-related deaths, which currently sits at 7. So yes, in theory, there are conflicting reports. Those coming from Taser International claim that there's no link between tasers and death. Yet several reports, including this latest study published by the American Heart Association, say that there is a conclusive link between tasers and death. So, is this going to encourage police departments to reconsider their use in the field? We'll have to keep raising awareness around the issue and wait and see.